Tekken is a fighting game and is the first of the series. It was released in arcades in late 1994 and on the PlayStation in 1995. It was developed and published by Namco. It is succeeded by Tekken 2, which was released in 1995. Gameplay: Tekken is one of the earliest 3D fighting game franchises, with the first game applying many of the concepts found in Virtua Fighter by Sega. As with many fighting games, players choose a character from a lineup, and engage in hand-to-hand combat with an opponent. Unlike most fighting games of the time, Tekken allows the player to control each of the fighter's 4 limbs independently. The player can watch the animation on screen and figure out the appropriate command. By default, there are 2 rounds of combat. However, the players have a choice from 1 to 5 rounds, as well as options for the time limit of each round. If the time limit for the round expires, the character with more health remaining will be declared the winner. If one does not exist, the round will be a draw. In the game, the name of the location is displayed in the bottom right corner of the screen. The locations are all real places and included Angkor Wat, Sichuan, Monument Valley, Chicago, Kyoto, Fiji, Windermere, Venezia, Acropolis, King George Island, and Chiba Marine Stadium. Plot: Heihachi Mishima, the powerful and ruthless owner of the Mishima Zaibatsu conglomerate, announces the King of Iron Fist tournament, a fighting tournament with a $1 billion cash prize to the winner. One competitor from within the tournament is Kazuya Mishima, Heihachi's estranged son who has entered for revenge against his father. When Kazuya was only 5 years old, Heihachi had carried him to the top of a mountain and callously threw him off a cliff to test his son's strength and see if he would be able to climb back up the same cliff. Kazuya survived the initial fall, but with a large scar on his chest. This caused the devil gene within him to activate, revealed to be inherited from his mother in Tekken 7, offering Kazuya the opportunity to gain immense strength and power. Driven by his thirst for revenge, he climbs up the mountainside. The King of Iron Fist tournament takes place 21 years later, and by now Kazuya is an undefeated fighting champion. Kazuya enters the tournament and ultimately makes it to the final round, where Heihachi awaits him, angry and furious to know of his estranged son's winnings. Kazuya and Heihachi clash in battle atop the same cliff from which Heihachi tossed Kazuya years earlier until Kazuya, now powered by the strength given to him by the devil, overpowers Heihachi and beats him into an unconscious state. Kazuya picks up his father's body and drops him from the cliff. Smiling to himself, Kazuya becomes the owner of the Mishima Zaibatsu. Fighters. The original arcade version has 8 characters available by default. Each character has a sub-boss, a special character that was fought on Stage 8. The sub-bosses were clones in terms of movesets. Heihachi, the main antagonist, serves as the final boss for the game. All sub-bosses and Heihachi are not playable in the arcade version. When the game was ported to PlayStation, all sub-bosses and Heihachi were made playable. Kazuya's alter ego, Devil, was made available as an unlock for completing the Galaga-based minigame. The unlockable characters are only playable in the PlayStation version. Development: Tekken was not originally conceived as a fighting game. The project began as an internal Namco test case for animating 3D character models, and eventually incorporated texture mapping similar to that found in Namco's 1993 racing game Ridge Racer. In 1994, Namco acquired developers from longtime competitor Sega, which had recently created the first 3D fighting game with 1993's Virtua Fighter. Directed by Virtua Fighter designer Seiichi Ishii, Tekken was intended to be a fundamentally similar title, with the addition of detailed textures and twice the frame rate. Tekken was further distinguished by its intuitive control scheme and memorable characters. Because it was developed for Namco's System 11 arcade board, which was based on raw PlayStation hardware, Tekken was easily ported to the latter. It was the first arcade game to use this board. Tekken was marketed to small arcades as a cheaper alternative to Sega's Virtua Fighter 2, which was released for the more expensive Model 2 arcade board. Music. The music in Tekken was composed by Yoshi Arakawa and Yoshitaka Inagi. Release: Tekken was later ported to the PlayStation. The PlayStation version allowed players to unlock mid-boss characters when the game was beaten and had FMVs. The PlayStation 2 version of Tekken 5 features the arcade version of Tekken. In 2005, Namco re-released Tekken as part of the Nam Collection compilation for the PlayStation 2 to celebrate the company's 50th anniversary. Reception: on release, Famicom Zarshin scored Tekken a 38 out of 40, giving it an 8 out of 10 in their Reader Cross review. Edge gave it a 9 out of 10, stating that, despite lacking the overall visual allure of Virtua Fighter 2, Tekken not only matches the style and quality of Sega Euro unregistered trademark-esque character animation, but it pushes its rival to the wire in playability terms too. GamePro called the PlayStation version one of the best arcade-to-home translations ever, and commented that while the graphics look rough and blocky compared to Battle Arena Toshinden, the moves all have a clear and definite usefulness. They also praised the absence of ringouts in the sound effects, and concluded with impressive controls, lots of fighters, and strategic gameplay. Tekken makes Toshinden look more like pretty fighting than a real fight. Maximum called it far and away the finest beat-em-up to grace the Super Console so far, citing the well-balanced player characters, innovative control mechanic of assigning one button to each limb, complexity of the moves, and 10 playable boss characters, and arguing that the game is superior to Toshinden in both gameplay and graphics. However, they did criticize the poor PAL optimization of the European release. Tekken was a bestseller in the UK. The game was the first PlayStation game to sell over 1 million units. Guinness World Records awarded Tekken with multiple records in the Guinness World Records Gamers Edition 2008. These include, first PlayStation game to sell over 1 million units, first fighting game to feature simulated 3D, as well as a record for the entire series as the best-selling fighting series for PlayStation consoles. References: External links, official website, Tekken page at Tekkenpedia.